So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Jess Hausler, Chair of Women's Philanthropy. This evening, Women's Philanthropy and PJ Library are proud to bring you Zibby Owens and her fantastic anthology entitled Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids. Tonight would not be possible without the support of our corporate sponsors. I would like to express our deep appreciation to these community-minded and caring businesses that believe in our mission of Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. They are all listed on our website, www.jewishfedny.org. Being a mom of a little girl and working full-time, I know it took an effort to get here tonight, so I hope you enjoy. And now for our event. Robin Morrison will have a conversation with Zibby Owens. Robin is a career woman and a devoted mother and wife. She works as an advisor and educator in investing at the intersection of money and meaning. Robin's also engaged in numerous philanthropic activities, including our Jewish Federation of Northeastern New York, and she lives in the Capital Region with her husband, David, and has two children, Miles and Ren. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you. That was fantastic, Jess. I appreciate that. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to have been invited to join this conversation tonight. And I'm going to be moderating the discussion with Zibby. Zibby, you want to join us?
See, wasn't that a dramatic entrance? What did you think?
So dramatic. But here we go. Now I'm going to make you blush, right? Just shared a little bit about my background, but I sort of consider myself to be a late bloomer. And as we were talking on this, sort of this whole momhood thing, I've been observing with my friends and my sister and my family for many years. And then it was my turn. It was, are we allowed to swear on this? This is being recorded, so maybe I'll use gentle language. I was like a deer in the headlights, right? When it's finally your turn. So when Zibby and I were preparing for this conversation and sort of getting to know each other, so it wasn't another deer in headlight situation, I asked her sort of, when you're speaking in front of folks, what are the things that you want people to know about you, right? And I'm not a big introductory reader. You can all read everything about Zibby on her website, and hopefully you've all perused the books and heard some of the podcasts and all the incredible things you're doing. But she said to me, right, you said, I'm a podcaster, I'm a mother of 4, which I literally I can do it with 2. I don't know how to do it times 2. That you've been writing since you were 8 years old, which to me is just incredible. That was something that you found as a passion so young. But more importantly, your grandparents published your first book at 14, which you called Finders Keepers, Losers Reapers, which I love the title, and I'd love to hear a little bit more. But really, at the end of the day, what a fun way to start a storied career that will continue, and that you're remarried. So all of these fun facts about you. And what I wanted to share with everyone is that we talked, Zibby and I, we want it to be as interactive. So if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have ideas that you want to share, I always like to make these conversations to be almost action oriented, right? You're going to hear crazy stories. I'm certain of that. But share yours as well, right? This is interactive. This is meant to be a community of moms and mom supporters. And so we hope you guys will enjoy the conversation. So moms don't have time to do whatever it is that they need to do except be a mom, right? And that's not really an except. But as I was reading your book, Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids, which is the subject, and I mentioned this to you, if you haven't read it yet, I thought it was beautiful also that your daughter was the one that was listening to you kind of come up with this idea, put it together, and sort of in that strategy session of what you wanted to call it, said, Mom, you just don't have time to have kids, right? Like, and there it is, right? That is the painful, brutal, challenging, but yet beautiful honesty You have a memoir coming up in the summer, bookends, love, loss, literature. You have a children's book coming out. So you're kind of doing it all. But at the end of the day, coming back to this, moms don't have time for kids, right? There's 5 things that we talk about, that you talk about in the book, or that you have folks write essays on, right? Moms don't have time to sleep. Moms don't have time to get sick. Moms don't have time to have friends, to write, or to lose weight, right? And so these are a range of essays that, and I shared with you, I think it took me till like page 33 to start crying, right? There was one story that I was on the plane and the tears were coming down, the mask was getting all wet, but, and then there were some absolutely funny, wonderful ideas. So I'd love to just dive in and, where did this all come from? What's been the biggest surprise for you? Tell us the beginning. Tell us what drives you.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thanks, Robin, and thanks everybody
Absolutely.
for having me here tonight. The beginning. Yes, I started writing when I was really young, as maybe some of you did, or your kids or whatever at school. And my grandparents always really encouraged it. And yes, I have this tiny little miniature book they published when I was 9 called Finders Keepers, Losers Weepers, and How the Donut Got Its Hole. In fact, I could grab it and show it to you if you wanted. And they were very supportive from the beginning. I sold my first article to 17 magazine when I was 14, and it came out when I was 16. And I've been writing ever since. And life has taken me in all sorts of crazy directions, as everyone's has, I'm sure. The way I've ended up right here, right now with all of you really started about, well, it really started about 7 years ago when I got divorced, and I have 4 kids, as Robin mentioned. And suddenly every other weekend I had these long sort of stretches of quiet without the kids at home. And I was in a new relationship soon after and got remarried, but still weekends without the kids were such a shock. So I went back to things that I used to have time for before I was so stressed with kids. My kids now, by the way, are 14 and a half, 8, and 7. And so I went back to reading and writing. I started writing all the time for parenting blogs and magazines and all that kind of stuff. I've really always just worn my heart on my sleeve. If I'm crying in the bathroom, I'll share it, because I've learned that if I am having an emotion, especially as it relates to parenting, but really relating to almost anything, there are other people out there who are feeling the same thing. Maybe not at that exact same time, but I've realized that by my sharing how I'm feeling, I've connected to so many other people and not only helped myself, but helped the other people. So I wrote this one essay that went fairly viral called A Mother's Right to Sanity, when I was just completely fed up with the increasing demands on modern motherhood and was sort of venting about that. The man who became my husband now suggested I start a book of parenting essays called, and I said to him when he suggested that, I said, ugh, moms don't have time to read books. Long story short, that became the podcast that I started, a podcast called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, which I have been hosting since March of 2018. And I interview authors every day. Since the pandemic started in March of 2020, I've released an episode literally every single day, 7 days a week. So yes, I've done over 900 author interviews. I've interviewed the most amazing authors ever: celebrities, politicians, athletes, best-selling authors, debut authors, memoirists, scientists, athletes, everybody. It's been amazing, because as I've quickly realized, so many types of people write books, right? It's not just.
Do you have a favorite?
Literary fiction. Do I have a favorite kind of writer,
or a favorite that you've interviewed? I mean, 900 is a lot.
900 is a lot.
One that sticks out.
My favorite is my dad. He wrote a book, so I got to interview him. That was my favorite podcast. But I have interviewed a bunch of celebrities that I was like sweating. I was so nervous to do, like Andre Agassi and Alicia Keys and Natalie Portman and all sorts of people like that. But honestly, I'm more excited about people who have written books that I've loved for years and decades, and that I finally get to meet and talk to and ask questions of, like Dani Shapiro, who I've been following since I was in my 20s and who wrote Slow Motion and Inheritance. And today I interviewed Nick Hornby, who wrote About a Boy and High Fidelity. And about his new work. And I was like, this is so cool. I mean, I was so excited to talk to him. So people like that, people I've just been following or their book moved me, like Kelly Corrigan, The Middle Place, or, a book I'd read a long time ago that helped me through a particularly difficult time. So yes, it's fun to interview notables, but I really love connecting and crying with like Mitch Albom when he lost his adopted daughter. And I don't know, it's just been this completely wild, fun, amazing ride with the podcast. And I was not even a podcast listener. So I adore doing that. I did 4 today. I'm doing 3 tomorrow. That's what I do. It's my day job essentially. But it has started this whole creative outpouring. And it sort of spurned 2 anthologies. The first was called Moms Don't Have Time To, a quarantine anthology. And then the next was Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids, which Robin was talking about. And combined, they both have over 100 essays from authors who I'd had on my podcast, and I just wanted to hear more from them. Like, what did they think? What did they feel? Or somebody would tell me about how much they love to run. So I did a whole section in the first book about exercise. Moms don't have time to work out. And, the authors would write for that. Sarah Shepard, for instance. And all of it comes from a sort of a very deep curiosity I have about other people, but particularly, I guess, about writers, especially after I've read their books. And what started as just a few essays that I would email out during the pandemic to keep people interested and engaged. I also started an Instagram live show back then, and every day of the pandemic for the first about 4 months, I did a live show on Instagram Monday through Friday where I did 4 back-to-back interviews with anyone who was launching a book because I just wanted to help. Anyway, I've started now Moms Don't Have Time to Write, which is a personal essay site on Medium. Moms Don't Have Time to Grieve, which is an Instagram account, and there's a column on the Medium platform. I launched the Zivi Awards, which is a fan-generated award show that nominates the under-celebrated parts of books, like best spine design and best title and best publicist and things that other people don't pay any attention to that I think are really important because it's not just the writer, it's a whole team that makes the book. And I've started Zibby Books, my most recent thing, which is a whole publishing company. So that's been really exciting. And every day I have more ideas.
I'm curious, Zibby, as you're interviewing all of these authors, I know there was just recently a study published about CEOs and like what's the one common thing that they do every day, right, to be successful, or their definition of success. And the answer I keep seeing is meditating, right? Every morning they meditate. Is there a common trend or theme amongst all authors, or I should say, 900's a lot, but something that you all do that helps a creative process, or just, I don't know, in general life? Curious.
I definitely do not meditate, although I know I'm supposed to do that. There's so many things I'm supposed to do that I really don't do, but I know I should. I should drink more water. I should do all these things, but I don't However, I will say what almost every single author does, and which I also do, which I think achieves the same end, which is getting out of your own thoughts for a minute and calming down your breathing and calming everything down, and that is reading. I read a lot. I love to read. The authors all read. Most of the time when I ask for advice for aspiring authors, they suggest that other people read more. So I think reading is really important. I mean, there are different things that spark different parts of the process. I think across the board, most authors say that, it takes time. Like you can't just sit down usually and whip out your first novel and have it succeed. You have to work on it and think about it. And that unlike a 9-to-5 job, your ideas don't just flow when you're sitting down trying to make yourself write. Ideas come in your sleep. They come while you're out walking around or any other time during the day. So it's hard to confine to a time that's, a prescribed time, basically. But Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of meditating. Seems to be a lot of a lot of coffee, a lot of self-doubt and anxiety. I think that might be an ingredient in being an author.
It's also
Getting-
probably good for being a mom. Right?
Yeah.
It's practice.
yeah.
But one question just came in. How have all of these interviews changed you as a mom?
The interviews themselves may not have changed me as a mom. The fact that I'm doing the interviews, which is something I am super passionate about, and that the kids can see that, has changed me because I'm like doing the meaningful work I feel like I was made to do. And that happiness that I have, I take into my parenting. So,
Right.
like, my kids aren't behaving today. It's been like a really long 2 days.
You
And
just saw mine. You just saw mine, who was supposed to be in bed an hour ago.
oh my gosh, sometimes I'm like, I mean, does anything I say ever stick? Why are they not, like, how many times do I have to tell them to sit down at dinner? This is like not a newsflash every single time. But I could do that from a place of complete depletion, which is kind of where I used to come at it, and that does not improve my parenting. Or I come at it as like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. And you guys, like, I'm taking the time to be with you. And, you know, I could be doing something else. I mean, I'm thinking this in my head. I'm not saying this, but, you know, I'm choosing, like, every time I'm with you, I am grateful, and it is a choice. And it's not like I have to do this. And they get to see that I'm passionate about my work, and I hear them talking about what they want to be and how they want to love their work as much as I love it. And so I feel like I'm setting a good role model. I think I've always been a really good listener. I really love it, contrary to what it may seem like at this exact moment. Usually I'm very happy to just sit and listen and ask questions and try to figure out everybody's story. So I think they see that and know that, and they have an innate curiosity about people that hopefully I've helped. And it helps with their love of books, which of course comes second to the iPad or anything with a screen. Somebody just took my phone while I was working like 2 hours ago. It turns out they posted something about, like, you know, my dog under a blanket that I didn't notice for an hour and a half. But, you know, I'm doing my best. I don't know. I'm just trying like everybody else.
When people notice that you truly have a passion for this work, do they ask, you know, because you make a really great point about being happy and being fulfilled, which pours over into everything else in your life, including being a mom. Do people ask you sort of how to find that fulfillment? I mean, I know this is sort of beyond the scope of the book and whatnot, but, you know, how do you find it, right? I know for me, it was a very long journey, and I finally found it, and briefly was mentioned that I work at the intersection of profit and purpose, money and meaning, right? I put my philanthropic world with my investing world, and that all of a sudden created the passion. But that took me almost 20 years to figure that out. And what I always say is that it is a process, and you have to be calm about it. But I'm curious sort of what advice you would give those moms or anybody about how to find the passion.
That is a great question. There's a book that came out recently by Eve Rodsky. It's called Find Your Unicorn Space, or Finding Your Unicorn Space. And that's the best book that I've written about this very topic, about finding something that has meaning and that brings your true soul to it. I think it's less complicated than people think. The first step is just allowing yourself to think about and remember the things that you love, not that you need to do, not that you have to cross off your list, but deep down, things you just happen to enjoy doing. And it doesn't have to be something earth-shattering. I mean, a good friend of my family's I was talking to, and she's like, oh, I wish I'd found my thing. You know, I wish I had something like that. You know, I'm not good at anything. And she used to be in the hospitality industry. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you are the most amazing gift giver. Like, you could start your own gift business. She calligraphies like every label, and she spends hours like making everything look perfect. Like, I was like, I would pay you for this. I mean, not her probably, but well, actually, I don't know, maybe I ran out of time. Point is, like, she loves doing that. She loves the art of sort of wrapping and packaging, and that could be a thing. Like, she loves that. She loses when you lose your sense of time. So I would say, when you find your thing, it's something that it's something you've loved since you were little, but maybe it's just something you can't get enough of. right? And it doesn't have to be something you would think of as something professional.
I
It
love
doesn't
that.
always turn into something that's a moneymaker,
Right.
but if you're passionate about it, and I used to hear people say that, and I was like, yeah, fine, but like that's not gonna
Totally.
work, right? And for me, for years, it didn't make me any money, by the way. And I was like, and my goal was not to make money with this. My goal was just to do it and see what happened. And now it's becoming like a revenue generating business, which is great. But I did it because I loved it. And I wanted to just do it. And even if nobody listened to my podcast, I was just going to keep doing it because like, why would I stop doing the interviews? So.
Right. You bring up an important point, which is whether you make money or not in doing what you love, right? And at the end of the day, that begets the question is what is your definition of success, right? What is your definition of a successful parenting? What is your definition of successful work, of successful job? And as we were listening, or as I was reading the book, and as I've listened to some of the podcasts, right? These topics, these major topics, sleep, getting sick, having friends, right? Losing weight, right? Like, if you don't have time for those, do we still consider yourself a success, whether it's through work or not through work? And I'm just curious, how did you come to those 5 topics as you were putting the anthology together?
The first 5, the first 5 just like came to me right away. They were the ones that had the most material that I wanted to hear. The second 5, I actually posted on Facebook and said, moms don't have time to blank, fill in the blank, as a little poll. The thing that people wrote the most was drink their cup of coffee while it was still warm. But like those wouldn't generate that many any essays. So I took the ones that I thought would generate good content. I mean, moms don't have time to see friends, right? I'm always saying that. Like, I wish I had more time to see my friends, but I really don't. And with the pandemic, of course, it's like, who has time to, I mean, nobody's seeing people anyway that much, but back in the day, I used to feel like everybody else was seeing their friends except me. And I knew that would generate lots of friendship essays, and that would be something I would be interested in, and all the other ones. So I mean, to be honest, it's kind of endless what we don't have time to do. And it's not just moms, it's work, such busy women, working women. There's so many responsibilities. We're pulled in 8 million directions. So that's how I came up with those topics.
Amazing. Do you have a favorite or one essay that you were particularly drawn to when you were putting them together? I know I challenged you with that before, but
yeah, no, I have, I loved a lot of them. I was particularly excited to get an essay from Lily King because she's one of my favorite authors. And if you all have not read Writers and Lovers, it is so good, by Lily King, Writers and Lovers. Actually, you could listen to her on my podcast if you want to hear her talk about it. But it's a great, great novel. And so when she sent me her essay, I just got such a thrill, even seeing on the Word document that it was like essay for Zivi. And I was like, how cool is this? Lily King is sending an essay just for me. But it was about her daughter and her daughter's mystery diagnosis that became Lyme disease and her illness and how she felt about it as a mom. And it was so open, and her books are not, well, it was just amazing to see that side of her and to have her be that open and vulnerable. And so I think that was one of my favorites, just because I just have so much respect for her. And anyway,
as I was reading many of the essays, because moms don't have time to read all the essays, I was particularly struck by there was an inherent rawness in most of the essays, right? Some of these authors, just knowing them, don't necessarily write about themselves, but they're incredibly gifted, eloquent. I mean, the words, the analogies, the context, the taking fact and turning it into story. It totally struck me. So there was towards the end, Sarah McCall, is that how you pronounce her name?
Yes.
She wrote, "Today I read that in the first stages of human embryo, the heart is lodged in the head and only gradually slides down into the breast. I find it a sweet thought that they are born so close together, heart and mind. It confirms my feeling. I usually can't separate one from the other in myself." And I think that's my favorite line that I read. That and one of the other essays talked about finding her private space inside her closet with an air mattress. I forget which author
Yes.
that was, but that line, it was like, oh, right. It's taking something factual and then turning it into this like warm and fuzzy thing to always think about. And so I really loved that. And were there essays that you didn't include? And if not, if there were, why not? Curious.
No, this time so this was my second anthology within a year. So I learned a lot from the first one. And the first one, we were much more open about submissions, and we did have to say no to a few of them because they just weren't up to the quality level we were looking for, and the authors were too busy to edit them because they were working on books and things like that. So we just passed.
Sure.
This time we were very specific, and I worked with a woman named Carolyn Murnick to do all the line editing and everything, about getting specific pitches ahead of time. So we knew exactly what the stories would be and who was writing them and that we would want to run them. So we didn't accept all the pitches, but we accepted all the
Got it.
essays.
Classically working smarter, not necessarily harder, right? So we have a question that came in. What has been the most surprising insight while collecting these essays, or most impactful insight that you've found?
The most impactful insight that I found from all the essays. I mean, just how similar everybody's deepest feelings of sort of love and fear are, and how they go so hand in hand most of the time, that people are still, fundamentally good people who just want the best, and, they're not afraid to share. I think the themes are, we're all sort of fighting against time, but we all have to take time for what's important. And I think the importance of family came through a lot, the importance of friends. None of it was like, there's definitely not a moms don't have time for work. Moms find time for work, right? Like that there, I can't even say that. It's all the other stuff. So yeah.
You fit it in somewhere. The other thing that particularly struck me, yes, we've been living in the pandemic, but to actually start reading it in a formalized, published book was a bit wild, right? I think it made it all the more real, and also refreshing. Like, oh gosh, I experienced the same thing too. And you're reading about it, right? And it's almost like you think when you read something in a book, it's like a formal decree or it's something that's established. But right, the pandemic is we're almost in 2 years or whatnot. So I think that's super interesting because it's also unprecedented. Were there any surprises along the way vis-a-vis COVID?
Yes. So my first anthology came out in February of 2021. So right, not even a year after it had started.
Sure.
And I ended up getting COVID on my publication day, like the day before. So I did all my publication events at all these bookstores around the country virtually from bed with like a step stool on my lap and my laptop on the step stool. And I would like scooch myself up in bed to do the events. And then I would like shut the laptop and go back to sleep. I had like horrible vertigo. I was in bed for 9 days. And this was pre-vaccine and everything. So that was, I was just like, you can't make this up. You cannot make this up that I have COVID right now. So that was last February. And then, unfortunately, COVID really hit home with my family, my mother-in-law, my husband's young, beautiful mother who was 63 with no health issues at all, died in, she got it from her mother who passed away. And then my mother-in-law passed away in close within 6 weeks of each other that first summer. And so it's been quite a journey. My husband was just exceptionally close to his mom and grandmother. They all lived together for a long time. So he's, it's a part of our life still every day, because of those losses. And I donated all the proceeds of the first book, Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids. Moms Don't Have Time to a Quarantine Anthology. I started a nonprofit research center at Mount Sinai Medical Center here in New York to fund a new vaccine, which they are still working on,
Wow.
which will help developing nations. And it's a single dose vaccine administered through the nose. So they've been hard at work on that, and I've been really supporting that in lots of ways to hopefully make a difference.
Wow. Wow. That is a story of loss and love and patience and everything else. I'm not sure what what to say after that, but we started to talk a little bit about sort of the community that you've built and how that is so important to you, from everything from being part of, therapy for you, if you will, or helpful outlet. Talk a little bit more about the community behind what you're doing and sort of how they support each other, how they support you, and where we can all find it.
Yes. So I have little different pockets of community from Instagram at Zibby Owens, and I've actually made a lot of friends. I documented what I was talking about with my those losses and really everything. I was very open about it, and so a lot of people came on the journey with me and we became friends. And I even had people come stay with me, and my kids are like, I thought we weren't supposed to meet people on the internet. I was like, oh, this is different. They're my friends.
As I say, not as I do.
Yeah, exactly. So on Instagram, I have a virtual book club, and that met every week during the pandemic, and then went to every 2 weeks, and now it's every month, called Zibby's Virtual Book Club. And the author always joins as well for the second half of the discussion, and that's Tuesdays, usually Tuesdays at 2. So I have my little book group crew, even though now there are like thousands of people in the book club. And we started for Zibby Books because my publishing company, starting in January of 2023, will be publishing 1 book a month in fiction and memoir. And for that, we've started a whole group of book ambassadors. So if anybody is interested in joining that group, that's also really fun. And the book ambassadors are book lovers who like being someone in the community that spreads the word and works with bookstores to do events and promote books and get the inside scoop on all the things we're doing, like advanced copies. And we have another book club just for the ambassadors with some fun swag items. And we also have a writing community where once a month, a woman named Darcy Goring picks one of the essays that's been on Moms Don't Have Time to Write and gets a group of women to read the essay, talk about it, and then write as they're doing a Zoom. So that's the writing community. And yes, and in person too. I used to have salon events here in New York every 2 to 3 weeks, and people would come, usually about 40 women, all different types, and listen to authors speak. I hope to start those again, but who knows? And yeah, it's all just sort of slowly growing organically.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. So one question came in is, when do you sleep, or do you sleep? Right? Moms don't have time, but
I get
within that
question a lot.
context.
Yes, I get that question a lot, and I actually sleep less because my 7-year-old is like constantly in the bed, like with his feet in my rib cage or something. I do sleep. I get up early. I'm more of a morning person, and the mornings seem to get earlier and earlier. But to be fair, the secret sauce and how I get everything done, honestly, is again this every other weekend situation, because I have 4 full days without the kids. Obviously, I'd rather have the kids, but it's fine to sleep. So I get a lot of work done during those days that I can catch up and have sort of a head start on the week. But yeah, I've actually been struggling with working too hard, and not being able to sort of regulate that, because what I'm doing is so exciting to me. And I keep like coming up with new things and wanting to start everything, but I really have to be like, all right, get away from the computer. The emails can wait. It's really the emails that do me in. I cannot manage the emails. Yeah. And then reading, I've kind of developed this way, because I do at least, I cover at least 7 books a week on the podcast. So I've really taught myself this sort of speed reading technique that I can do now. I used to slowly read every single book, and I just do not have time to do that. So I read at least 60 pages of every book. Not
You
every
keep
single
every
book,
book?
most books, about 50, 60 pages.
Do you
Which I
have every book you've ever read? Because there's a lot of books behind you.
Um, I do. I have most books. They're not all here, and I have another room with tons of books. I have books everywhere. I mean, this is like and I was just literally on like Wayfair with my little guy, being like, you know what? Like, you need a big bookshelf in here. I'm thinking to myself, we have bookshelves everywhere. We have bookshelves in every room. It's like ridiculous. But yes, I have a lot of them back there, and the shelves go like 360 in the room I'm in now, and I have other rooms with lots of books. And
Do you prefer paper over digital?
yeah, because I really
too.
use them. I like get
Yeah.
into the books. I
Yeah,
flip
like
and
mark them up and
I mark them up. I write in them. I dog ear them. I underline. I flip back and forth. I really like to analyze it as a whole. Like, what is the structure of this book? What are the chapters like? The beginning sentences of chapters, the ending. Like, how did they do this? And going back and forth. Like, I use it. So it's much harder when I do that online. But I have to do it with a lot of early copies online. So that's okay.
someone asked from the audience to talk about your color scheme of your books. Has that ever been asked before?
It has.
What's behind it?
And yes, I did that during the pandemic. Like that time I was talking about that I was in bed. After I got out of bed, I came in here because my bedroom's right across the hall, and I hadn't been able to see anybody for days. And for whatever reason, once I got even a little bit of strength back, I took every book off the shelves in this room and put them on the floor. And it took me 2 days. I sorted them by color, and then I just started putting them back away again. And I literally haven't touched that wall since then. I just like made that wall, and
it's fabulous. It's fabulous. I just threw my books back up. I did have color at one point, but that's really fun. Let's see. Another question came. Do you have a favorite Jewish author?
I'm Jewish myself, by the way, in case you didn't know that, but not that it matters. A favorite Jewish author. I mean, I know I just referenced Dani Shapiro, but interestingly, she writes a lot about religion. Favorite Jewish author. I'm trying to think of who. Well, this always happens to me. I have to look. I have to just start looking around. Let's see.
That's such a good resource, right?
That's such a good question. And of course, now I can't think of any authors, Jewish or not Jewish.
Linda's the one who asked. Linda, do you
maybe
have
Jennifer Weiner. I really like her books.
Oh, she's fun. She's great.
She's great, and she never disappoints me. I feel like it's very consistent quality.
That's a good one.
I don't know. I'll stick with her for now. That's
okay.
Right. That's what I have right in front of me.
So the next question that's coming in from our audience is, do you do work to engage teens to read and analyze books?
Yeah, I don't. But I've been thinking a lot about this because I have 2 teenagers, and they would much rather do a lot of other things than read. And when I was a teenager, I spent like all this time reading. I mean, what did I have? Like Snoopy tennis, so anyway, I spent a lot of time reading. I thought about doing a Goodreads for kids, like having
For those who don't know what Goodreads is, will you share? It's the app.
It's where you log all your books, and you can follow authors, and it's an app and a website, and it just like helps you stay engaged with your community. I talked to Goodreads about it, but they were not interested in doing that with me. TikTok has been attracting younger and younger people, including this book talk movement. In fact, a lot of people, apparently younger kids, are like acting out books and then being like, this is what the book's about, almost like a real life sort of acting trailer on TikTok. I haven't, and I thought about doing a podcast for kids. In fact, I had one for a couple weeks until I realized I didn't really want to talk to children's book authors any differently than I talk to everybody else. So it really wasn't targeted to kids enough. I would have had to, but I know it's a problem, and I haven't figured out how to solve it quite yet, but I'm mulling it over. I'm not sure I'm not sure I can solve that because it's hard to compete with TikTok.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, that's a very honest answer, and it's probably very frustrating. I don't necessarily know that yet because my kids are too young, but I know that we have books everywhere in every room of our home too, for that very reason, to instill. And I've always wanted to, it's one of those things I always say, like, I always wish I read more. And every time I sit down and I actually read, I'm in heaven, but there's always something else going on. So, as you've been talking with different groups and discovering and learning and growing, what's been your favorite question or your favorite thing to share along the way about your journey or about your work or anything that comes to mind?
My favorite thing to share? I feel sort of most real sharing my failures, honestly, because, the times like that it's just, I don't ever want to like hold myself up to pretend to be this perfect mom and that I'm doing all these things and I'm doing it all well and everything's great over here. Like I don't ever want to make people think that that's possible. Right? Like life is so full of ups and downs and I mean that sounds trite, but
No, it's honest.
I have a lot of anxiety. I've gone through a lot of stuff. I've had a ton of loss in my life, and um, I like people to know that a lot of what fuels my work and my speed and work ethic is that I'm very aware that I'm racing against time every day, and that
Sure.
the clocks are ticking, and not just till bedtime, but forever. And if I can raise people's awareness to that in a funny way that makes them get the most out of their lives, then I feel really good about that. So
I love that.
that's really what I'm trying to do.
No, that's incredibly important. Along the same lines, what you're probably looked at for advice on parenting, right? Because of the virtue of the brand and what you're building. Along the way, what's been your favorite piece of advice that you've received?
About parenting?
Yes.
I don't know. People always keep scaring me by saying little kids, little problems, big kids, big
Big
problems.
problems, right?
I'm like, how many times do I have to hear this? What big problem is like lurking around the corner? Like I'm anxious enough. Do you know, like what next?
Exactly.
So I don't know. Maybe that's my least favorite parenting advice. I also,
Right?
the days are long and the hours are, I don't even know. It's like the every day
Days are
is
long, the years are short. Oh, great.
I mean, enjoy every moment. It's like, no, some moments are terrible. And like, I just want to have the day end as soon as I wake up. Not all the time. But in terms of good advice, all I can think of is all this bad advice. I mean, my mother's whole philosophy as she watches me running around crazy all the time, and she's like, benign neglect, just they'll be fine. I'm like, is that what you do with me? So I don't know. Good advice.
Well, I guess good is all in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah. I mean, I really think. Oh, go ahead. Is
I
someone
was going to say, I don't want to interrupt, but I'll give you the advice that I gave my niece. She's like 35 now. And she said it really worked for her a lot. And I told her when she had kids, I said, no matter what you're going through, it's going to change.
Yes.
It's not going to stay the same. And she said that she's used that so many times for good and for bad, is that things just are so transient that they do change. So anyway.
I love that. I think you actually shared that with me when I first moved upstate and we got to know each other. That's great. So I'm going to change course for a minute. And this question came in from the audience, and I actually was trying to figure out how I was going to weave this into the conversation. I'm just going to go there. We are a Jewish group, and with today being International Holocaust Remembrance Day, have you spent time or met with any authors or any surviving authors along your journey, or anybody that's written about the Holocaust?
I've read many books by authors whose family has been affected, but not actual survivors themselves. I haven't I interviewed any. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, earlier this week I released my episode with Ariana Newman, who wrote When Time Stopped, about her family story. Earlier today I interviewed a Harvard conflict professor named David Damrosch, and his great-great-grandfather was a violinist in Poland by the Lodz Ghetto.
So you've
yeah.
never interviewed Dr. Ruth?
I'm sorry. No, I have not. Although, wait, I've interviewed Tova Feldsha, who played Dr. Ruth, recently, and I went and saw that play. And I did meet Dr. Ruth recently at the Child Mind Institute benefit, because I'm on the board there too. But I did not interview her. But no, I read a lot of Holocaust. I read a lot of Holocaust literature, historical fiction based in the Holocaust. Yeah, but
Right.
I don't think I've interviewed survivors. But yes, I mean, not to say I love that genre, but as a Jewish woman, I'm endlessly fascinated by the stories of survival. And
for sure. So I mentioned at the start that you have a memoir coming this summer, a children's book. What else is next? What can we expect from the Zibby Owens universe?
I don't know. Yes, I have a children's book on April 19th called Princess Charming, about a girl who can't figure out what her thing is, and then she realizes that her thing is that she never gives up. And I have a memoir that I've really been working for like 20 years on, more or less, because I lost my best friend on 9/11, and after that happened, I started writing about it, and writing, and my life has changed in many ways, but that's still like a central part of the book. And that's coming out July 1st, and it's Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature. And I talk about 200 plus books that I talk about my life as seen through the books I was reading at the time, because I always remember what I was reading where and during all of those times. What else?
I think you should give advice on memory. Like, your memory is extraordinary. Your recall.
It's really not. It's so bad. It's so bad. In fact, in the anthology, I can't remember if the first one or the second one. The second one, I think. I wrote an essay about how my memory was so bad that I went to a neurologist and had an MRI, and it turned out they found this benign brain tumor. And it was like this whole thing where they almost did surgery, and then it turned out it had been there forever, and it's like tiny. It's been there forever, and nothing is ever going to happen with it. But yeah, I thought I was losing my mind, which is really just because I wasn't sleeping and I was totally stressed out, which is
because you don't have time.
Hashtag mom life.
Exactly. So we have one comment coming in that it's not a question, but Laura said, "Thank you, Libby, for all your enthusiasm, your wonderful podcast, and your Instagram posts."
Thank you.
She's been a follower for a long time, since the pandemic, and even participated in Moms Don't Have Time to Lose Weight.
Oh, yay.
So that's a robust community. So you have some fans from before, and I'm quite certain that you have just made a whole bunch more. So I'm going to take a pause, and there have been questions that I've added to the chat, but I think we're going to open it up if anybody has more questions or comments or thoughts. Happy to kind of have Sarah unmute everybody and share ideas, thoughts, parenting tips, whatever it can be. I mean, this has been absolutely amazing, Zibby. You were right that you and I could chat endlessly. And it's parenting is a journey for sure. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Anybody have more questions? Okay.
You guys still awake out there? Yeah.
I guess, Jess, you can close the evening for us.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you,
yes.
Zibby.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
It was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zibby and Robin. And I'd like to thank everyone again for joining us tonight. We have several great Zoom events coming up in March and May. For now, they'll be on Zoom, but we're hoping to get in person as soon as possible. All of our events can be found on our website or by reaching out to Linda Pollock Kessler, our WP director. We have put that information in our chat box now. And if you're interested in finding out more about PJ Library, a contact email is in our chat box as well. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe and healthy. Take care.